What's happening, guys? Welcome back to another video. So happy to be here, interacting with you guys. So today we're going to be doing a number of different videos. I realized that there are some procedures and styles of growing that I actually haven't covered yet. So these are going to be predominantly informational. Today I'm mostly going to be focusing on regenerative farming practices, cover crops, mulch layers, um, canning and food preservation, and of course rotation cropping. And I just felt like it was really important because not only do we need to know how to grow food throughout the year and annually as well, but we also need to know how to store it in an efficient method, as well as learning how to grow in areas that traditionally you can't grow anything. Hence the regenerative farming. So with that, don't forget to like, subscribe, drop a comment as per usual. Um, I know we spit out a lot of videos. I'm going to be trying to actually name them and stay a little bit more on topic. Produce some better material for you guys. So this one we're actually going to start out with. Let's go ahead and do rotation cropping. I got our arbor gate here, little pamphlet. So just a quick note: rotation cropping is when you take all of your crops and you actually, whether it be annually, biannually, quarterly, however you decide, and depending on your growing seasons. So, like for example, someone that only has two, maybe three growing seasons, they'll probably just rotation crop annually. So they'll rotate their crops once a year. And then someone like myself in Texas, where we essentially have about four seasons, even during winter and fall. Traditionally, there are things we can grow, as stated here. And with that, we'll go ahead and jump into it. So this is not a sponsored video. The Arbor Gate, the reason I am referencing to it is I essentially did a quick Google search for a 1-year planting guide. Something that could help me break up the seeds and transplants, and ultimately, I cannot memorize everything. So I need the help of lists and things of such. And so what I did is I went on Google and I just put for our zone. Since we're kind of like a southern Texas area, I went for zone 8B and 9A. And the reason I did that is 8B, technically, even though we are 9, it has a colder climate. So that's more of like a northern Texas area that 8B would be, or like central Texas. So the things that can handle the cold and can handle our weird heat down here in the south are all going to be kind of listed because it's for that general region. Now, I basically this covers all vegetables. Arbor Gate here is amazing. I know some of my parents have worked with them before. You can actually send in your information or make donations and things like that, and they'll send you back local wildflowers and bushes and trees. So it's a pretty cool regenerative practice. Maybe y'all want to look into. But I went ahead and printed their schedule. So as you can see here, I'm gonna see how we can do this. So basically, it has the list. I know it's hard to see, but the list of all the plants, and then it has like a reference name, and then it tells you whether it's a seed or a transplant here, and then it actually has like a graph. So we have squares and empty diamonds and empty. So the squares are both filled and empty. I think you can see some of it down here, and then every month, it just goes down. It's a little graph chart, and you just kind of see what to plant when. So you could be like, all right, so we're in August, right? Boom. All right, we need to be planting this. Now this plants all year. So we can move this around. It doesn't have to be in the same place. And that's where the rotation cropping comes in. So since we're going to be planting throughout the year and going more food forest, they're always going to be in a different location. So one year, first season, so we'll say spring, we may have a lot of tomatoes on the north side of the garden. Okay. And then we seed the second season, well, maybe green beans start doing there, a lot better there and kind of taking over that area. So now the nitrogen is getting fixed. And of course, we also have our mulch layer down. Now, rotation cropping, because of the nitrogen fixers, it's very beneficial. So, say we start out with our heavy fruiters in a singular location. We'll say this notepad is our singular location. We put our traditional, we'll go ahead and traditional rows. We'll do it that way of just tomatoes going down, right? We harvest those tomatoes, and since we practice regen farming here, I would actually just chop the tomato bushes, lay them, let them dry, lay them down, and then plant the next plant directly over where it would have been seeded. Now, my second um, plant that I would prefer would actually be the green beans, because if we did the tomatoes in spring, they're going to do a little bit better. Um, because around June, July, you really need something real heat tolerant. Well, the green beans and stuff are fairly heat tolerant and they're cold tolerant. Um, so the tomatoes, that's going to be mostly a spring and fall. So during summer and winter, it's when we're going to be doing our vines, so our nitrogen fixers, our cover crops, things like that, and that's where it kind of gets finicky, is because there are cover crops that I would prefer to use during a winter time and plant them in the fall, and some of those are actually like things like carrots, radishes, beets, and you're probably asking, okay, well, what does that do? Because they use phosphorus and things to create larger roots. Well, they actually help break up the soil. So it's kind of like a carrot. It's kind of like shoving a wedge in there. So part of no-till, so to speak, they actually have a device that will either like push a needle into the ground and then blast air, and then of course they also have like these just spinning star disc things that you can run, push and run across the ground, and it's supposed to aerate the soil. In rotation, in rotation cropping, carrots, beets, things like that, they do that for you. So it really saves you a lot of time and energy. And again, that also kind of falls back on do nothing farming. So it's they all work well together, and that's what's hard to just describe. One is because they, the best farming practices are biodiversity ultimately. So mixing up what you have is going to help for sure. And also, I've grown carrots through the winter. So we actually had a last year, this last winter, we had a mite infestation break out, and those of you that have mites or have had mites know that they get everywhere. So you walk into the greenhouse. We have a sun bubble that we use here because it's Texas, so we don't really need a whole lot of protection here. And then we walk inside, and our pothos plants and other indoor plants, boom, they break out. Now we got mites everywhere, and you have to treat everything, which is fine. It happens. You learn to work with it. But the point I was trying to make behind it is, um, during that time, we had a large pot filled with carrots, and they got demolished by mites. Of course, we used like neem. Uh, we didn't use bleach, but I did opt to use hydrogen peroxide and Dawn dish soap in intervals. I did not mix chemicals. Um, and we watered everything down. I hit the sides of the greenhouse and everything. Uh, but the carrots, after I treated them and they started doing all right, the mites tended to come from that pot. So I just threw the pot out in the cold to kill off the mites. When I did that, not only did our growth on the carrots increase, but they exploded. They do really surprisingly well in the winter, and then that's why, during winter, I prefer to do root vegetables, things that even without my help, they will be fine on their own. So because of that, during summer, I prefer to do most of my nitrogen fixers, most of my vines, things that are going to sprawl across the ground and keep that ground cool, retain water. I don't want to water all the time. I know we have a timer, but still, we got to pay for that water. We do live in the city. So because of that, I tend to go more that route, and that's the rotation cropping I prefer. But everyone's going to have a different rotation cropping based upon skill level, setup, time available, and resources. We're installing a mulch layer. This is the current system I'm using is not something I could have done a year ago. uh, because we always had grass, and things like that. I did a lot of container growing, which I pray I don't have to do all that again. Um, I grew a lot in my greenhouse. I needed our garden going around the clock, but because I'm doing larger scale rotation cropping on our do nothing farming with permaculture, combining them, it really helped our location, for our location. Um, we actually just recently seeded for our fall crop, and it is doing fabulous. And again, we'll do a video on all this later. But basically, that's pretty much what rotation cropping is. And so again, if you were a tobacco farmer and all of your financial income came off tobacco and you didn't really want to diversify, you would need to figure out a way of adding in cover crops. Your cover crops would be your rotational cropping. Those are your nitrogen fixers, your phosphorus fixers, your ground breakers, everything that's depleting that soil because of the tobacco just sucking that nitrogen up during the off season. Now, tobacco is typically grown, I would say, spring to fall. I believe in the falls when they mostly, try to do most of the harvesting and stuff. Um, and tobacco, they have to have like 30 minutes from the time it gets cut. It has to be hung up and drying, otherwise it'll start wilting and stuff or something like that, and just breaking down. So in that field, I would say 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks before, since tobacco would have to be cut by hand, before that's even cut, your cover crops should already, your nitrogen fixers specifically because of the tobacco, should already be seeded. Why? Because that means that your tobacco crops would actually be able to shade and help retain moisture for the seeds. And then you would also be able to really flush those tobacco plants, getting a cleaner and more oily product while you're, before you harvest. And so even though they're going more of a cover crop route, ultimately as a farmer, having green beans isn't too big of a deal because, hey, that's food for your family at the least. You may not be making money off of it, but that's fine. Maybe it'll attract birds. Birds will help with the mice. Again, nature will start rolling. If nothing is eating on your garden is not a part of the ecosystem. Make it a part of the ecosystem, and always, always, always give Mother Nature 15% tax, because she's going to take it. It's not up to you. That's hers. So, if you guys haven't had a chance, go ahead and check out Arbor Gate. It'll help tell you when to plant, what to plant. Like I said, cedar transplant. Uh, I actually printed a blown up version of it, or my significant other did for me, and laminated it for me to hang up on a wall. And it is 10 out of 10 would recommend. It is made seeding and planting. It takes the headache away. Somebody did the work for you on a month by month locational scale. And from what I understand, I do believe that we they actually have it for other locations. I do think it's a Texas, more of like a Texas thing, um, but I could be wrong. Regardless, check them out. Worst case scenario, you know, it leads you to a website that has something for your location, and also take time to recognize what location you're in. That's also going to help you. So that's pretty much going to be it for the rotation cropping. Like I said, don't forget to like, subscribe, drop a comment. Love interacting with you guys, and I would like to have a little bit more Q&A. If y'all ever have any questions, do not be scared. We also have a email, so if you don't want to ask me any questions on here, feel free to email me at hippieorganics.com, all lowercase, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Have a great day. Be kind out there, and we'll see you.